All right, welcome everyone to the Phoenix Report. I am Jack Connor, and with me is a guy who is on one of my first podcasts, one of the early episodes. It's been a while since he's been on, but we just got out of seeing Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and it's a little bit late. I think the movie came out about a month ago, but right now, as we record this, it is Saturday, January 19th, 2019, and with me is Marko Bojkovic.
Hey everyone.
Yeah, Marko, of course, the guitar player for Particle Effect and future Doctor to the Stars, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was something that I've wanted to see this movie for a little while now, and this is like your third time seeing this already?
Yeah, it's my third time.
No, I mean, I know that I've been hearing a lot of good things about this movie, but anyways, so this has been about the third time you've seen it so far. You've been telling me, like, look, if you go see this movie while you're down here, I would gladly go again. So what is it about this movie that makes you want to keep going back?
Just the movie in general. It's Spider-Man. What else do I need to say?
Yeah.
Not only that, it's multiple Spider-Men.
Gotcha.
It's a dream Spider-Man movie.
You know, it wasn't even your traditional style of animation. There was a lot of different styles going on. It was very surreal, very abstract, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but you would have it definitely, they tried to have like sort of a comic book aesthetic to it, where they would have captions up in the background and different words would pop out, you know, that like bang, pow, and zoom and all this other stuff. So it was very kinetic. It was almost like a video game.
But they didn't seem to do too much of it. You know that whole speech balloons that you just mentioned? It seemed like they only did it in the beginning when Miles was discovering his powers.
Yeah, I think that was almost they were trying to edit that as far as when he got bit by the spider, and that was just sort of trying to convey that. It was really interesting how it, you know, I wasn't really all that sure what to make of the movie when I saw it. It was just because there were so many different things happening, but mainly the crux of the story is focusing on Miles Morales. Mm-hmm. Now, Miles Morales, this character has been around since I want to say the early 2000s,
something like that. Yeah,
when it came out, and it ended up being really popular. Mm-hmm. And this ended up sort of following the from what I understood, the comic book story to be, where he lives in this alternate dimension where his Spider-Man gets killed and he ends up taking over. And of course, the plot of this movie is, you know, how you have all the various Spider-Men from, you know, various different universes. Yeah, different dimensions converging on one. And I feel like it was really interesting that this got made, and I mean, not only got made, but got released theatrically, because it's such a bizarre concept. It's a very comic book plot, for sure. I mean, if you're not if you're not really that into the comics and stuff like that, like if you're sort of a casual fan, I don't know how well like normal everyday people are gonna respond to this sort of movie. But if you're like a diehard Spider-Man fan or a diehard comic book fan, I think this is a nice little sort of love letter to all these different various incarnations of Spider-Man.
I also think this is kind of a love letter for people who love animation, because this movie really set the bar high for animated movies to come. They're going to be adopting styles of other things.
It did. There were a lot of different visual styles going on here. You had like sort of the traditional like cartoon, you know, thing with, you know, Spider-Ham, the pig, and all that. Mm-hmm. You had the anime girl in there, so it was a lot, and you had obviously the noir Spider-Man, the black and white, which we can get into that in a little bit. But it was a lot of different visual styles kind of converging on one. It almost, you know, like I said, not only did you have sort of the comic book elements of the captions and the balloons, but also there were times where it looked like, you know, where like one frame would be like very like sleek and computer generated, and the others would be like almost as if you were reading it, you know, in a comic book, where it looks like it was drawn with ink and paper. You know, it was a lot of different. There were so many different visuals. It was kind of hard to keep up with, but that's kind of what made it unique.
Mm-hmm.
But even like, you know, going and following the plot of it, it was a little weird, because it was this whole side plot of the Kingpin trying to build a particle accelerator, and there was like a female Dr. Octopus, which was interesting. I don't really know much about her, but
I don't either.
Yeah, because
Truth be told, I think she's an exclusive for Miles' universe, not for the mainstream Spider-Man.
That makes sense. She said her name was Livia Octavius. I don't know if she was like the wife or daughter of Otto Octavius, and that's the Green Goblin. I mean, no, that's Dr. Octopus.
Dr. Octopus is
Dr.
Octavius. The Green Goblin is Norman Osborn.
Right. No, but what I was trying to say was that Otto Octavius is the Dr. Octopus that everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just trying to figure out what her deal was. Livia, I guess, Liv. But it was like there were a lot of cool moments in it. Like I guess in Aunt May's house they had this whole secret lair underneath. You know, it almost looks like it was built by Tony Stark, but it was almost like a spider cave where they had like a Spider-Mobile and a motorcycle and just this whole row of costumes. It was really, that was like a really cool thing that I had never seen in any kind of Spider-Man movie or TV show or anything.
Of those costumes, which one would you say is your favorite?
Oh, I don't know. I would have to go back and take a closer look at all of them, just because everything was happening at once, and this has been my only viewing so far. But
I could probably find a picture of them.
Yeah.
For me, it was the black and green one.
Yeah.
I love that mix, man. They actually had a name for it. They called it the stealth suit.
But yeah, it was definitely cool. Like, I think one of the cooler parts was learning about an older Peter Parker, which we haven't really seen in any of the movies so far, even dating back to the Sam Raimi movies with Tobey Maguire.
Mm-hmm.
All of the live action versions of Spider-Man we've seen so far are him starting out as a high school kid and maybe going into college. But it was interesting seeing a Spider-Man who's been on the job for a little while and has grown up and gotten married and all this stuff, and just to see him play the mentor role to Miles, I thought was really, really cool.
Not to mention him becoming fat.
Well, I mean, yeah, that happened. He was a little bit down on his luck. He was divorced from or separated from MJ in his universe, so he kind of let himself go a little bit. And so they kind of played that into a comedic effect.
So much for handling it like a champ.
Well,
I could say that though.
Yeah, well, these things happen, I guess.
Well, what if someone listening to this hasn't seen the movie yet?
Well, trust me, if you're listening to this, we put a spoiler alert at the beginning of it, so I don't know if we're spoiling much of anything. I mean, this movie's been out for like a month now by the time we recorded it, so I'm sure we're very late to the party as far as putting this thing out. But what were some of your favorite parts of it?
I don't know. I guess when all the Spider-Men are in that room and they're trying to not let that kid see him.
Yeah.
And Spider-Ham doesn't want to make the kid feel uncomfortable, so he asks him if animals talk in their world. He defeated the purpose, really.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was good. I liked how John Mulaney, I think, played the voice of Spider-Ham.
Yeah, John Mulaney did.
He's a pretty good comedian.
Oh yeah.
And you had Nicolas Cage as the Spider-Man noir, which was really cool.
Does Nicolas Cage strike you as like an old style actor? Like an actor who would portray like someone
like from the 30s?
Yeah, from the 30s.
Well, I mean, Nicolas Cage is one of those guys. He plays a lot of different roles, so it's I think they were just looking for for someone who could kind of embody that sort of thing. And obviously Nicolas Cage isn't that old, but he's just one of those guys. He can kind of disappear into a role and do that sort of thing. So I've been a fan of Jake Johnson, who played Peter Parker, the older Peter Parker, and Jake Johnson was on that show The New Girl with Zooey Deschanel. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No,
but he's been in a couple different movies now. Really funny comedic actor, and I didn't even put it together until the end of the movie, but it was Chris Pine playing the Peter Parker of Miles's universe. So originally I thought it was Jake Johnson doing both roles, but apparently not.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
The new Captain Kirk did it.
Yeah. That's right. Well, I mean, he's been on the job 10 years now. He's not really the new Captain Kirk anymore, you could say. But Haley Steinfeld was Gwen Stacy. Mahershala Ali was the Prowler, Aaron Davis, Miles' uncle, which in the movies, in Spider-Man Homecoming, you had Donald Glover play the part of Aaron Davis. So there's a chance maybe in the live action movies we might see Miles Morales down the road. Because he, if you remember in Spider-Man Homecoming, he said, he's like, I've got a nephew and this and that. And so now we don't know, because Tom Holland is still playing Spider-Man as a young kid. So maybe Miles Morales is just like a little, just a little boy in this version. But maybe eventually they might, that could be something they might do down the road in the movies, where you have an older Peter Parker mentoring, Miles Morales. Maybe they might get to that in the MCU.
Hey, Toby could play that role now.
Yeah, I don't think they would do that, though.
I don't think he's interested anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm saying, what I'm saying is that in the new movies with Tom Holland, maybe eventually in a couple years, if they stick with that, unless they reboot it again, I don't know. But I was just saying, maybe that's something we could see one day. Maybe they might introduce Miles as a character in there somewhere down the road. You never know.
I hope they do. Miles has really grown on me. I first got into him when I played the Spider-Man video game on PlayStation 4. Mm-hmm. It had a bunch of stealth missions, and some of them you played as Miles, and some of them you played as Mary Jane.
Okay.
But the Miles ones were pretty cool. There's even one part in which he confronts a bad guy before he gets bit by the spider, and he beats him and runs away.
Mm. Yeah, I didn't really know a lot about Miles the character. It seemed like he had sort of a similar personality to Peter Parker, where he's like this really smart kid, maybe a little socially awkward here and there, but but again, he goes to this really like high-end private school, almost like a boarding school, which is interesting because it's like, it's like you already live in New York. Why not just?
I think it was a boarding school.
Yeah. So, it was interesting how that kind of all came about. I still don't know a lot about the character, but what I thought made it interesting was that both his parents were alive in this one, which is almost kind of rare for a lot of superheroes when you think about it. Like, how many of them have both their parents around?
Not just superheroes, but like fictional characters in general. Like the whole parent dying cliche, it's really getting old. And how are you supposed to explain that to your kids? Oh, his dad died. Your kid's not gonna like that. Your kid's gonna get scared.
Yeah. Do you find that a lot in like other movies with like you said that's sort of a cliche. Like what other movies do you see that in a lot?
A bunch of Disney movies.
Oh yeah, no, I guess that's true.
Disney princesses.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that is true. A lot of parental death in the Disney movies. Never really thought about that, but especially in Frozen, yeah.
Hey, Jack, how hard does that hit you now that you're a dad?
What do you mean? That like the
parental deaths. Like, how do you feel about them now that you're a dad?
I don't really think about it, I guess. I haven't really. Yeah, I guess I haven't really thought about it in that context, but it's just a weird literary device that people use. So
don't let it scare you.
I won't.
My parents are not intimidated by it.
Well, that's good. I don't think anyone should be intimidated by stuff that happens in movies that are not real. So, Lily Tomlin played Aunt May in this one. That's interesting. And Zoe Kravitz played Mary Jane in both of both versions of Mary Jane in the two universes there. Man, it gets confusing.
I think it's weird they got one actor for Mary Jane in both universes, but two different people for Spider-Man.
Yeah. I don't know. it's a little odd how that happens.
Probably should have stuck to one actor.
Oh, they have Liev Schreiber play Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, and he was Sabretooth in X-Men Origins Wolverine. So that's kind of cool. Someone with a little bit of prior Marvel experience in there.
Except we don't talk about X-Men Origins Wolverine.
I do. I thought that movie was fine.
Not me.
Gotcha. Well, a lot of people didn't, so I know I'm in the minority of it, but
we won't judge you for it.
Oh, good. It's my podcast. Don't no. If you're judging me for it, why are you listening? And then there was the post-credit scene with Miguel O'Hara / Spider-Man 2099. I didn't really know a lot about this character. I know my cousin had had some of those comics back in the day of Spider-Man 2099. But I thought that was Oscar Isaac playing him. It sounded like It's like, yeah, this guy sounds a lot like Poe Dameron, so it's got to be him. And that little exchange where he was in the 1967 cartoon version, that was pretty funny.
And Stan Lee portraying J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah.
Not sure how many people know this, but J. Jonah Jameson was someone Stan Lee always wanted to portray.
Yeah, that was something that you told me a little earlier, that I had never heard anything like that. But but it makes total sense to me. Like I could have seen Stan playing that role years ago, and
And for the listeners who didn't know that fact, now they know.
Exactly. But by the way, I love the cameo that Stan had earlier in the movie, where he was at as far as like, yeah, me and Spider-Man were friends and this and that, and I forget what the actual line was, but I thought it was really sweet.
He said that he was going to miss him and that they were friends and that the suit always fits eventually.
Yes, that was it.
But I don't think he was saying in the sense that Miles is going to be a hero, because it said right next to him on the sign something like no returns and no refunds.
Well, yeah, that was just a little joke that they put in there. But yeah, no, I mean, all in all, it was an interesting movie. Like I mean, I wouldn't say I like loved it, that I was over the moon about it, but it was cool. I enjoyed it. I know you really dug it. I know I know Seamus, who I usually do these things with. He was like really telling me about the movie, telling me that you got to see it. Now he's a diehard Spider-Man fan, so I totally understand that. But
was he Spider-Man for Halloween for 7 years in a row?
No, but I'm guessing you were.
I got him beat on that.
Wow, that's
and I'm proud of it.
Wow, that's impressive. So it's interesting how this movie came about because of the deal with Sony that made with Marvel Studios, where I guess they were allowed to essentially they're splitting up the character rights, where they're allowed to make movies that are like Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home that are in the MCU, but they can also do these animated movies that are kind of their own thing. So I guess maybe that's part of the deal that they made whenever that happened. I don't really know, but it should be interesting to see if they make more of these animated movies, if they'll be related to this one, if they'll just do all these different versions of Spider-Man and have them kind of stand on their own. It should be interesting to see.
They're making a sequel and a spin-off.
To this one?
Yeah.
Do you know what they're going to be yet?
No, I don't. But I think the big question is, what's going to happen that will allow all these Spider-Men from different dimensions to come together again?
I'm scrolling through the Wikipedia thing right now as we record this.
I'm scrolling it with you.
And it looks like...
I don't think you mentioned the guy that played Miles Morales yet.
Yeah, it was a guy named Shameik Moore. I'm not really familiar with him.
I'm not either. I think this is one of his first, if not his very first, major roles.
Well, let's see.
Apparently this guy's a rapper and a singer.
Yeah. Okay, so he's done a few TV roles before, and yeah, I guess he's got his own album out, so...
He does.
Yeah, so he's done some TV stuff, but this is probably his first, like, his biggest, film role.
No doubt about it.
I think because they have all these different, they're introducing, the multiverse, so they could probably do these spin-offs and just have each of these versions of Spider-Man kind of go off and have their own movie and have their own adventures, and maybe if they want to bring them together again, they can. I remember at the end of this movie, they kind of left a little Easter egg, like Gwen was talking to Miles right at the very end, like she figured out how to communicate between dimensions. So you never know, they could end up doing stuff like that.
Another question, is it going to be those same Spider-Men or completely different Spider-Men? Or both? Exclusively the Spider-Man we saw, or not those same Spider-Man, but completely new Spider-Man, or both? You think from the post-credits scene that it'd probably feature both, because of that Spider-Man 2099 dude?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, and I don't know if they would keep all the same voice actors around, but yeah, I mean, I guess what they're trying to establish is that it's a multiverse, so they could pretty much do anything they want, as far as, telling all these different versions of the character and still having it exist, where they could bring them all together if they want to. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with it. So
I can't wait for it.
Yeah.
Neither can my dad and my youngest sister.
Yeah, are they really big Spider-Man fans as well?
Well, my dad's a big Spider-Man fan in general, and I think my littlest sister's getting big into it too. I took her to see this movie, and she absolutely fell in love with this. She actually began drawing art based on this movie.
Okay.
She even made up a band for each of the individual Spider-Men.
Cool.
And I think she had a funny story involving Venom becoming the singer.
Wait a minute. She drew a picture of them being in a band, playing music.
I think so, or at least she came up with the idea and hasn't executed it yet.
Interesting, man. You learn something new every day when I'm hanging out with this guy. I'll tell you that right now. But Marko, you're in the band Particle Effect. Where can people find them online? Is it at Particle Effect on Twitter or?
We have an active Twitter and Facebook page. Sorry, we haven't been too active. We're trying to do better, honest to God. But life happens, and so we've had to delay it a lot.
For sure, man. Well, anyways, yeah. Thank you guys for listening. You can find me on Twitter at jackxconnor, and like me on Facebook, facebook.com/jackconnormusic. Check out my band, Vertebraker, at VertebrakerFL on Twitter, or facebook.com/VertebrakerBand. If you don't know how to spell it, I'm going to put it in the description of this thing, so don't worry. It's going to be there. So, anyways, for Marko, I'm Jack. This has been the Phoenix Report. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you again. Bye.